Well, even if Boris Johnson makes a speedy recovery, he is likely to be unable to resume work for some time. This week's regular Tuesday meeting of the full cabinet has been cancelled, and there are concerns about the way the government will continue to handle the crisis during the Prime Minister's absence. Well, joining me now is the Director of the Institute for Government, Bronwen Maddox. Bronwen Maddox, thank you for being with us. Who's in charge?
Dominic Raab. The Prime Minister can't really be running the government at the moment, though there was that nice deliberate ambiguity of saying that he would delegate the authority when necessary. But Dominic Raab is going to be in charge of the day-to-day decisions, though he's going to have to do that with the cabinet. Anyone in his position can't overstep his authority. And his authority in the British system it really depends on the cabinet's support. So he couldn't, for example, go into a reshuffle, start forging his own path on Brexit, though he happens to agree with the Prime Minister very much on Brexit. He has to follow really the decisions that Boris Johnson has laid down. And I think it's fortunate in this deeply unfortunate and worrying episode that some of the big decisions were already taken. For example, the lockdown, which the Prime Minister explained to the country, and then the big economic bailout. But he's got to still implement them. That is not easy, as we've been hearing in the past couple of weeks, a lot of scrapping about why stuff hasn't happened. And there are some big decisions also looming about how long the lockdown goes on.
If Mr. Johnson were to become incapacitated for an extended period, does Dominic Raab then become the Prime Minister?
No, we don't have automatic succession the way, for example, the United States does, where it is all laid down in order of a long list of people. No, we don't have that at all. The Prime Minister is first among equals within the Cabinet, but the Cabinet governs the UK. It could be Dominic Raab, but it could be someone else the Cabinet put forward and agreed on. And if there were two candidates, if you like, I think the cabinet would be bound to try and pick an acting Prime Minister while then going through the long process of picking a new party leader and Prime Minister.
So it would be the cabinet that would choose the interim Prime Minister, but then you might actually be into a Conservative leadership election.
You might be if the Prime Minister couldn't come back, or if that was if he felt that he was stepping down, or the cabinet felt that that was inevitable. Dominic Raab might well start with a head start in that as the anointed one in this emergency, if you like, but it would be by no means certain.
Bearing in mind that a lot of the most radical decisions have already been taken in terms of the economic package and the lockdown and the rest of it, is it really the case that the country is being run now by public servants rather than by elected politicians?
No, I don't think that's the case at all. There are a lot of decisions that have to go into just managing the implementation, to use that jargon word, of what has already been decided. Trying to work out which tests to buy, that is a decision. Whether they work or not, that means synthesizing, scientific evidence, official advice, but it's something that ministers are best placed to do. Trying to work out how to get the personal protective equipment to right across the NHS. Well, that's something that civil servants will be very centrally employed in. But again, there's going to be decisions that ministers have to make. And you could hear already this week, before the Prime Minister was taken, so before his condition worsened, you could hear more voices saying, how are we going to get out of this? Keir Starmer, the new Labour leader, came straight out of the trap saying, look, what's the strategy for getting out of this all? We want to hear that from the government. Now, maybe that's a bit unfair because no country on the planet at the moment has an exit strategy and may not properly until there is a vaccine. But there is going to be a lot of pressure from people saying, look, how long does the lockdown go on? And we've got a 3-week review of that due next week. Well, there's probably enough scientific ammunition, so to speak, at the moment to say extend this period of the lockdown. But at some point, this is a decision that only politicians can take, not civil servants, of saying to the country, look, there needs to be a longer lockdown, and this is why. And trying to make those decisions about the trade-offs at the heart of all this. That is, in the best sense of the word, a political decision that ministers take on behalf of the country. It's not one that officials can take.
Yes, and without the Prime Minister present, is there actually anyone with the authority to take what will be a very major decision?
Well, there is, in the sense that Dominic Raab has the nominal authority, and the cabinet, I'm sure, will rally behind him in this unexpected emergency. But there will be differences of opinion. And the thing about the Prime Minister is that he is Prime Minister. He's met the Queen, but becoming Prime Minister, it is a different role, and he has an innate authority to resolve disagreements and say, okay, I hear what everyone's saying, and we're going this way, not that way. And it is harder for a stand-in to do that. So I'm sure the cabinet, is going to want to act together on this. And after all, Britain is governed by the cabinet. There's a principle of collective responsibility. So I'm sure they will be trying to speak with one voice. But these are very difficult decisions, and a lot of people's lives and livelihoods rest on them. And it really takes that authority to communicate that to the country. And there's no doubt that the absence of the Prime Minister is a loss in that respect.
Bronwen Maddox of the Institute for Government, thank you very much indeed.